we're live.
Great. Okay. Well, it's 4:36 and we will begin the February 18th Policy Committee meeting. We have a quorum. We have Dr. Maddox, Attorney Hull, and Dr. Gant on the committee with the support staff, including Dr. Thomas, of course, and Mr. Harris and Mr. Gaskins. And I'd also like to welcome our brand new intern from the University of Georgia, Caitlin Franklin, who will be joining us for the next 6 months or a year, was it? Is it a year?
Yeah, it's a year.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'm very excited about this. So welcome again, and I'm happy to have you help us out here. Okay, so I guess the first thing on the agenda is, I guess I called it to order. Did everybody look at the minutes? We need to approve the minutes. They looked okay to me, but I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the minutes.
Second from Nicole. Okay, great. Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 Great. Thank you, everyone. Next, I'll entertain a motion to amend or adopt the agenda.
I move that we adopt the agenda.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Dr. Thomas, did you have anything to report to the committee?
No, ma'am. I know I've been meeting with all of our team and they've been working diligently on policies. Mr. Gaskins and I talked today, Dr. Watley, and I spoke today as she's working on the ones for next month. So everyone is working just to get these cleaned up. And I just want to remind, the group that these are just policies that have been on the books and not new areas that we're looking to bring or recommend. So there are many that are very antiquated. Some I was looking over with Dr. Watley today and I was shocked with some of the language that still existed in policy, just based on dating of when things have been revised. So we're just as eager as you all are to try to get some of this brought up to date and make the policies current. And then we will work on those regulations of how we implement those policies. So we just appreciate you all continuing with this work.
Great. Thank you. And I would concur with that. Just in my habit of giving us an overview, this month we're reviewing as many policies as we can get through. I might note, given what Dr. Thomas just said, we're mostly reviewing and minor revisioning these to just get them current. I note that in the legal guidance from Mr. Pruitt, he consistently reminds us that many of these policies could be waived if we wanted them to be waived under our charter status. So as we progress through the year and reconsider and think about our charter status, we may want to revisit some of these policies if we think that we want to request the waiver from state law. So keep that in mind as we discuss them. I know I wanted to kind of get in there and fiddle with them and see if we could get around some of these things, but I think for right now, at least, we're just trying to bring them up to speed, up to current best practices and state laws, and that we'll think about them in the broader context a little bit later in the year, perhaps, hopefully. The only other thing I wanted to say is that I think it's 4:40. We may need a second policy committee this month. And so I would ask you all to please consider either next week on the 25th, an hour or so before our professional development next Thursday, or otherwise the 4th, March 4th, an hour and a half before our work session in March. I think we're going to need to finish up these policies unless we fly like the wind, which we may. We'll see how it goes. But even if we get through all of the I's, we do have a few other things to talk about, including the BBC committee policy, which we really need to fix according to our retreat discussion last month. And I'm still working on a draft, but we may need a short meeting to move that policy forward in order to get onto the April work session agenda, or sooner perhaps. And then next month, as Dr. Thomas said, we will be jumping into the J policies and trying to finish up those with the help of Dr. Watley. Okay, so that's all I had. Shall we jump right in? The first two policies, or are there any questions or comments on that? First of all, I always, would people be amenable to another meeting this month? Potentially. Would it be better to do it on the 25th before the professional development or on the 4th before the work session? Dr. Maddox, you're often the one that has the constraint.
Yeah, I'm looking at my calendar.
Okay, you can just let us know too. We
Yeah,
don't have to make a
okay.
decision tonight. I'll query all of you next. And of course, we'll need, if we don't get through all the I policies, we'll have to work with Mr. Gaskin's timing as well. Okay, moving on. We have two D policies that have been hanging around. The purchasing policy that was last reviewed in 2019. So this was not on our original worry about list for Cognia, but it has come up in multiple discussions. This is the policy that decides how much leeway do we want to give the superintendent, currently Dr. Thomas, but in general, all superintendents, how much purchasing power do we want to give them without board approval? And currently we have set the level, as of 2017, the level was set at $80,000. And I have heard from board members that they're not comfortable with that large of a number. And so we have brought this forward to have that discussion. And Mr. Pruitt's comment says that the district state charter was amended in 2017 to permit the board to set the superintendent's authority to make purchases at any level between 10 and 100,000. At that time, the board voted to set the level at 80,000, and the board can change that level at any time and to any amount it wishes, so long as it's within that range. So it could be, we have a discussion here today about what we think, but I also maybe just recommend that we kick it up to the work session and discuss it as a board for as brief of a time as we can manage and try to come to some board consensus about what that amount should be. Dr. Thomas, I invite you to give us your thoughts, if you wish, on how that 80,000 works for you and what your thoughts would be about something that would encumber you unnecessarily. Where do you sort of see that number comfortably?
Right. Of course, the 80 has worked. I understand why there were some concerns. I think some of that might have related to some contracts that have been entered into in the past, seems to have been what prompted this discussion in general. We don't have a lot of purchases at that range, but I know like today or yesterday, I had to approve replacement laptops for teachers. That's just a standard, something that has to be done. It was maybe like $56,000. And that just seems like a natural something to do. My only concern would just be if it's too small. I'm not concerned about the accountability piece. It's just more of the limiting progress of daily operations if every expense, in essence, because purchasing equipment and that type of thing can become costly pretty quickly. And so if we have to wait for every expense to be approved at the board level, it could slow down day-to-day operations. Yet I do understand concerns about large contracts and large consultant fees and that type of thing. So I think if we can just try to find some median, there where you can do the day-to-day work without every expenditure requiring an approval.
Okay, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add another example. We just added another physics classroom at ACCA, and the materials for that class were $30,000. And we tried to, equip that classroom as quickly as possible. So I just worry or wonder, not worry, I think worry is the wrong word, wonder, would we have been able to do that as quickly if that number had been lower?
Okay. I know that there's an emergency provision in this policy that makes it possible for you to do anything at any amount in an emergency, and it defines an emergency. And then you just have to notify the board. So I don't know if that would have accommodated the physics purchase or not. But I get it. So I just want, Dr. Thomas, maybe you could be somewhat prepared for the work session to defend a number, or at least
Okay.
request a
I
certain
can work
number.
with the team and Byron on that.
Yeah, I mean, if it's 40,000 or 30,000 or 50,000, I don't think anybody on the board feels like we want to encumber progress. I just think that there's some feeling that 80 is a little bit too high. So I guess we should have that discussion. I would recommend we have that discussion as a full board. Dr. Gant, do you have a thought about how that would impact the work session?
No, I think if it's if the policy committee is okay with, going ahead and asking us to put that on the work session, or at least be prepared for that at the work session agenda. At that point, the full board can try to be prepared to share any thoughts that they have. So I don't see any issues.
Okay, I tried to send a query around everybody earlier today, and I've heard back from no one. So no one seemed to be in the mood to talk about it today. So I guess I would just kick it to the work session if that's okay. So in that case, I would entertain a motion for both items number 1 and 2 to move both forward to the work session as is.
I will move that we kick both policies DJE and DJER1 to the work session so that we can have a discussion there around these policies.
Second.
And thank you. All in favor? Aye.
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 And we just send them up as review only, and then we'll make any revisions to them as a board. Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, the next item is IB, which is our instructional programs, goals, and objectives. And I saw no legal implications, except the reminder that we could waive some of these things. Mr. Gaskin, I will let you take the floor, but it looks like you just removed a very long list of stuff and very nicely just linked us to the strategic plan. Is that a fair summary?
Yep, that is a fair summary. We just thought that that language was antiquated and that it should be more aligned with the strategic plan and the vision of the superintendent at the time.
Any questions or comments about the suggested revisions? Okay, that was easy. I noted that Attorney Hall said something about whether we wanted to add life skills to this. Would that be something in addition to just the alignment with the strategic plan? Attorney Hall, would you like to address that comment you made earlier?
No, I think it's fine as is. I know Ms. Gallagher had also mentioned us teaching children life skills before, and that was something that I was interested in exploring to see if that's something that could be put in as a goal, but it's fine without it.
Okay. Dr. Thomas, do you think life skills is part of our strategic plan? Would that fall under that, or is that a separate?
I'm pausing because I'm thinking, so does life skills, in my mind, and Mr. Gaskins, please jump in, it is encompassed in the college and career readiness skills. So it's not explicitly stated out as a separate skill, but I see that and the teaching of soft skills as areas of being college and particularly career ready. So that's where my thinking would go, is that it is there. It's just not specific. Now the question becomes, and this is more of a procedure part and instructional part, is then us ensuring that those skills are taught in a variety of settings. So maybe not just at the Career Academy, but are we teaching those skills in some form? So that's not necessarily a policy issue. I just think that
Right.
is in practice implications that Mr. Gaskins can make note of, that we just, when we're looking at curriculum and expectations of instruction, that that's included.
I think it's a good point. So thank you, Nicole, for bringing it up. But I do kind of agree that they kind of fall under the college and career ready. So that's great. Okay. Shall we move this one forward then, as is? Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of moving IB forward as revised, say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. IC is pretty easy. This is the curriculum development policy. It has a very minor revision of changing advanced ed to Cognia. That's the only revision here. Any other questions or comments about this minor revision? There were no legal implications. In the wording, I just noticed that there's the state, the word state. So it reads, accreditation requirements established by Cognia State Accreditation Agency. Is that the right phrasing? Or is it in capital state? I don't know if that's right. It seems, I guess that's right.
No.
Are they the state of accreditation agency?
No, Cognia is a private nonprofit that's national in scope. So
Yeah, so
I would
remove
just
that
put a
word.
period after Cognia.
Right, because it looks
Yeah.
like a period is already there and like it's just a random incomplete sentence.
Yeah, okay, so. Ms.
I
Tillman,
think when
maybe
we were discussing it, Mr. Gaskins, I can't remember if there was like discussion ongoing between stating Cognia or stating the accrediting agency, but I can't remember where state came in. And I don't know if it was just in the process of changing it since Cognia had changed from advanced ed, which had changed from, I can't remember
It
Zach.
was a verb then,
Sex.
Dr. Gant. That
That-
makes sense. It was a verb, not a.
That's
adjective.
correct,
Okay.
Dr. Gann. Your memory is much better than mine because we worked on these.
It's
So
not, that's
long
really the
ago.
only thing I remember from all of our conversations.
So I believe what we were attempting to do was saying established by Cognia or the current state accreditation agency.
Got
In
it.
case Cognia changed or there was a change, then our policy wouldn't necessarily be out of date until we updated it. So I think that was our intention.
So the phrasing was Cognia or the
The
current
current state.
state accreditation agency, and state would then be capitalized, I guess.
The thing is, there's not a single one accreditation agency.
For the whole state.
Yeah, Cognia is by far the largest and probably the one every school district in Georgia uses and many other states, but state law doesn't mandate the use of Cognia, and I'd have to go back and find the exact language but it's I mean, if you want to open it up, we probably need to look up that statute and use the language the statute uses about what an accreditation agency is.
Is it like state approved or something, or state?
No,
No, they don't approve them either. Okay.
no, they don't approve them. Let's see. You got me under pressure here.
Okay, well, we can put that one off and that would be a friendly edit, I think. We can just leave that one. So remove it for now, all the other words for now, and then we can come up with a small edit at the work session if we need to. Okay, so a motion to move that one forward as with the minor revisions.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Next one is a review only, a regulation that describes ICC that describes research proposal guidelines for individuals wanting to do curriculum research within the district. I read through this pretty carefully, having been a researcher myself, and it seemed reasonable to me. And I guess, Mr. Gaskin, you have a review only recommendation. Is that correct?
Yes, James Barlaman is our research approver. He reviewed this policy for us and he did not have any revisions.
So the word research liaison, is that still current at UGA? Do we know? Or at Piedmont? CCSD research liaison?
I do not know.
Okay, so that might be worth double checking on. But the coordinator of grants and research is Mr. Balamoff, you said?
Yes.
Okay. And that's the right wording of his title, coordinator of grants and research?
His title, it's like a title and not a title. So he is the director of research and grants, but he is also he's the coordinator of the approval. So I guess we could change it to director of research and grants.
Okay, well, that was my only question. Actually, no, it was one of my questions. Just checking on that language. The other one was the photo and video guidelines, which I was looking at because we not long ago worked through the EBCC policy on videoing in classrooms. And I wondered if we might want to add a reference to EBCC, which is mostly about surveillance, but does have some language about videoing in the classroom and under what conditions videoing can be done. Do we want to refer to EBCC? Sorry, yeah, EBCC. Or are you okay with just what's in here as a standalone?
Which one?
I'm fine with that addition. I don't have any reluctance here around that.
Okay, so Ms. Tillman maybe just put CEBB, EBCC. Thank you.
Where am I adding it, Dr. Yeager?
Where it says photographing, videotaping students. And I guess where would we put it? And maybe in front of the colon after MET, like put parentheses C policy EBCC. Or C also policy EBCC. And it seems like that sentence should not be bulleted since it's referring to the rest of the sentences. But that was, again, minor. Any other comments or concerns or questions about this policy? Or, sorry, regulation? Okay, shall we move it up?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of moving this up with the minor revisions and potentially fixing the language of the research liaison once we find out what's going on, but we can do that in the work session. All in favor? Aye.
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 Great, thank you.
Dr. Yeager, could I take us back to that accreditation thing for a second?
Certainly.
I posted the list from the code in the chat, and I remember this now. They still say Sachs in the official code of Georgia, which was 2 names ago. So, I'm not sure how we keep up with them if they don't bother to change it themselves. I think I just say Cognia and leave it at that.
Okay. Or should we or similar, or just leave it, I guess.
I would
right?
just say Cognia and leave it alone. I mean, it's, and this is why the General Assembly hasn't changed it, because it's assumed to include any organization that they're merged into or become a subsidiary of, which is what happened. Sachs became a subsidiary of Advance ED, and then Advance ED turned into Cognia. And there's no need to
Okay.
update it.
Okay, so we'll just leave that one as is. All right, moving forward, we have number 6, policy IDA. This is the basic program. And it was a short 2 paragraphs, a review only. There was a legal comment on this one. Mr. Pruitt, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, this is IDA.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so yeah, and I'm sure Brandon can explain this a million times better than I can, but I was just noting that there's really not a course listing anymore in state regs. It's, we do standards-based content standards, and that's what teachers have to teach to, and they're evaluated on. And I think the list we have here is really aligned to those content standards, but I'm going to toss it to Mr. Gaskins to correct me.
I don't see the list that you're talking about. You're talking about, I don't see the list that you're talking about.
The reg, are you talking about the reg? So
Yes,
the IDA reg has a
that's
long
right.
list of course listings.
Oh, yeah, I would agree with what you just said, Mr. Pruitt, that we are focused on standards and not just the subjects and the titles. So that could be something that we updated.
So we want to set the reg aside and work on it, or do we want to rescind it, or what am I hearing here? The policy, this talks about QBE, the Quality Basic Education Act. Instruction shall be guided by the approved state of Georgia and locally adopted curricula. Prepare students to graduate as lifelong learners, So there's not, it's pretty vague in the basic policy. Do we want to say something about standards-based in the policy and then delete the reg, or do you want to just take the reg and work on it, and we'll work on it later?
I would say delete the reg and add the standards-based instruction in the policy.
So what would that look like in the policy? So currently it says,
maybe that last sentence of the first paragraph, instruction shall be guided by the approved state of Georgia and locally adopted curricula. It could say instruction shall be standards-based and guided by the approved state of Georgia and locally adopted curricula.
okay.
Mr. Gaskin, could you try to say that one more time?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. It's so easy when you're not the one typing. Instruction shall be standards-based and guided by the approved state of Georgia. Do you see that sentence, Angela?
I got it. I got it.
Any discussion about that suggestion? And then we would delete or rescind IDA R1.
Take a look at your second paragraph of the regulation before it starts the list, and see if you think you need to retain that.
Yeah, Mr. Gaskin, I defer to you. I mean, I don't know. What do you think?
I think I might want to take a look at this a little closer. I might need to get with our director of counseling just to make sure.
Okay, so we'll set aside, or let's see, postpone. Is that the right word? Postpone
Mhm.
IDA R1 until we meet again. And Mr. Gaskin has a chance to review. Do we want to move, Mr. Gaskin, would you like to do the same with IDA for now until we get a consistent, a full picture?
I think that's fine. I doubt if we make any major, but since they're connected, I would just like to keep them together. So we can
Okay.
revisit both of those together.
Okay, Angela, do we need to vote on that, or we just, we vote to postpone, or we just do it?
Either way, you can vote to postpone to a date certain, or it can just go on to old business on your next agenda.
Okay, that sounds good. Old business, since we don't know when we're going to do it. Okay. I need a new color for things that we do that to. Hang on. Okay. All right, moving on to number 8. IDAA is the CTAE policy. And I'm unclear on why the changes were made as they were made. It looks like a paste from something and leaving the main paragraph. So Mr. Gaskin, can you tell us what you did here, please?
So we worked with our coordinator of CTAE who added the purpose, because we used the Carl D. Perkins Vocational and Technology Amendment to guide our CTAE program. So he thought that it was important that we add the purpose of CTAE and then the requirements for its sustainability.
Which was mostly a review process, right?
Yes.
And Mr. Pruitt, you said something about the 2006 version of that act, and the policy change states 1998. Is that a consistent?
No, I think that, yeah, we ought to change that to the 2006 version of the act and that public law number if we want to cite it. But this stuff under requirements, like I said, so it's a federal program. States have to do 5-year plans with reviews. And I'm assuming this list under requirements that's been added is something that maybe the state has passed down to local districts that they want, that they then aggregate and send back to the feds as part of their required 5-year plan. But I don't know. This is below the level of law. I'm just guessing that this is part of the administrative process.
That's correct, Mr. Pruitt.
Okay, so that needs to be in our policy. We just need to fix the 1998 to be 2006. Otherwise, it's in the number. The public law number needs to be updated. So it
Yeah, that's
was
right.
109332, and it should be 109270.
Right.
Okay, Angela, did you get that?
What was the year? You said 2006.
2006 instead of 1998. And then it was 109270 instead of 105332.
Did that get it?
I can't see that small.
Oh,
Make it
sorry.
109270. I think that's right. Yep. Okay. Does that work for everybody? Did everybody like the bottom paragraph that we retained? That we shall operate a CTAE program secondary experiences outlined in it. So the annual local plan, I wanted to ask about that. Is that something the board looks at, or Mr. Gaskin, is that just something you guys, that's operations?
So we present, I don't know if you all remember, we just presented the plan. I can't remember, it was recent, maybe in November or December. And to answer your question, we look at it yearly, and I think that we bring it to the board yearly. I'm sorry. We do bring it to the
Okay.
board yearly to let you know the progress. And I believe we did that in either November or October.
Okay, so that's where the board shall approve, maintain, and fund the district local plan and services for CTAE. Does that need to say annually? No, I guess it's the annual local plan, so that's already there. Okay, so the rest of that is consistent. All right, so just leave it. Any other questions or comments about this one? Attorney Hull, I don't have that you had anything about this in your comments, so. Okay, shall we move it forward?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of moving this forward as revised? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to number 9, it's 5:13. We're doing pretty well. This is IDAC kindergarten. It's a review only, and it also mentions, I note, early childhood education, even though it's called kindergarten. Is that common terminology, Mr. Gaskins, to talk about pre-K and early childhood education under the guise of kindergarten?
To be honest with you, I don't know if it is or is it or
Okay.
not. It's just a CCSD specific policy.
Okay,
So I don't know. We didn't think
Okay.
anything was quite wrong with it. It didn't say anything that contradicted what we do with kindergarten. So that's why we didn't change anything.
okay. So the part about a comprehensive sequential early childhood curriculum geared for the needs of individual child is consistent. Okay.
Yep.
All right. Any other comments or questions about this policy? Review only? Okay, shall we move it up?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of moving kindergarten up, review only? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you. Number 10, policy IDAF, instruction in U.S. history and government. Some revisions here to include, well, some of them are minor, just a word edit, school district instead of schools. And then which includes with the semicolon or the colon, and then the long list of things. So we're adding a study of Georgia's institutions and ideals and a study of the Pledge of Allegiance to the Georgia flag. I'm assuming these are to be consistent with state law. Is that correct? Mr. Gaskin, you want to discuss?
Yeah, that's correct. We looked at the state policy on this one, and we just mirrored the state policy.
I actually like this a lot. I think when I submitted my comment, I looked at the policy as listed on the CCSD website. So I would retract that comment. I actually like this a lot.
Great. Yeah, so the question you had about whether the course descriptions match these additional words, you were okay with. Okay, great. Any other questions or comments about this policy? Okay, shall we move it up?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Excellent. All right. Health education. Okay, so this was a review only. Reflecting the requirements of Georgia law. So my only comment was this list is kind of odd. Mr. Gaskin, is there an origin of this list? Health careers is mentioned twice. There's physical fitness and fitness assessment. I mean, where's the root of this list?
That
It feels
reg,
a little like a grab bag. It feels like a reg, yeah.
that's
Just wondered.
that's your tax dollars at GDOE at work. That's their reg, that one that's cited there in my memo.
So this list is what's in their reg?
Yep.
Repeating health careers twice?
I'll look it up and make sure. That
I just looked, interestingly, they have just put out for a 30-day public comment the new health curriculum for the state. I was just reviewing that before this meeting, so I'll be curious, I guess, to see how that new health curriculum, if that has any impact on their policy in terms of instruction of health.
Okay, well, I will, I'll assume that it is what it is. Ms. Hull, you made a comment about special ed and how do we
It's probably
accommodate.
more instructional, but when I look at that list and I see making sure that we include concepts of the last 4: physical fitness, lifetime sports, outdoor education, and fitness assessment, I would just want to make sure that as written, our students, our exceptional students, are able to participate in these concepts. So I have no problem with the policy. I just want to make sure that we think through and making sure that we're inclusive.
And I agree with that, Ms. Hull. And I would say, if it is appropriate as listed in their IEP, because some of our students receive OT or PT or adaptive PE, and they may not, because of their exceptionality, have like a fitness assessment or, do something outdoor, but it should not prevent them, what you are saying, from doing that unless it is stated in their IEP, which,
Correct. Yeah.
which, my expectation is that our practices are consistent with that, but that is always something that we can make sure that we are doing with consistency.
So do we want to reference the special ed policy that addresses that? Do we think that's covered in another policy, or should we point to it?
I don't think that that's necessary, because it more is I guess an instructional or even an administrative. It's in that purview, just with the policy and reading it. I want to make sure that it's able to be implemented without any changes needing to be made. So I want to make sure we deliver something that we can give to Dr. Thomas and her cabinet to actually implement. So I think Mr. Gaskin's explanation was good. And so I'm fine with not adding anything to it.
Okay, other thoughts?
And all the errors you pointed out are in the state reg.
I was just looking at that, Mike. I was like, wow.
Okay, well, it is what it is. All right, so this is review only. Leave it alone. Shall we move it up?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're making tracks. All right, IDC number 12 is extended programs. Mr. Pruitt notes that this is a list of opportunities outside the direct curriculum or the main curriculum, basic curriculum, I guess. No legal implications. I do have a note to myself to double check the policy references. I've checked a few of them, but I didn't get all the way through. Any other questions or comments about this? Ms. Hall, you said something about making sure restating the sentence about transportation and food supply. Is that something we want to consider?
That should have been for summer school, but I did
Oh,
have.
sorry.
No, you're fine. But I did have a question about some of these opportunities. Will the eligibility or the requirements ever be listed out in the policies? I mean, it may not be here, it might not be the appropriate place to put those requirements, but like when we were just talking about CPAE, and when we get to the gifted program and some of the requirements are listed out. So with our work-based learning, with our other extended opportunities, I just have a question as to whether or not those eligibility requirements will ever be listed in the policy.
I think they would generally be in a reg, but right now the board is approving regs. So we could request that those become part of a reg or at least an exhibit, which we don't approve, but we can see. Mr. Gaskin, do you comment on that?
I think we can do that, Ms. Hull. I will just be transparent about my ignorance. Some of those extended programs were not a part of this update and policy. So I don't know them as intimately as I know the other 35 that we've worked on. So I would have to look into that a little more, but I think definitely we want our families to know the requirements, and if we need to adjust, revise, whatever those requirements based on the direction of Dr. Thomas, if it's an exhibit, or the approval of the board, if it's a rec, we will, a regulation, we would definitely do that.
And I think that's the part I'm missing, and it's me just being new to the board and to the policy committee. If at some point Dr. Gann or Dr. Yeager or even Dr. Thomas, there could be kind of a discussion about what is a policy versus what is a reg, because I think I'm getting hung up and crossed up between the two, and that would help me kind of know how to synthesize some of my comments and concerns.
I got a nice PowerPoint and description when I first joined the policy committee, and I'll send you a copy of that. So you have that copy.
Thank you.
Dr. Yeager, I'd be happy to, I've kind of edited the PowerPoint since the last orientation. So I'd be happy to do a policy committee orientation with you, Ms. Hull, and any other members who'd like to attend.
Yes, thank you so much.
That was very helpful, I remember. Sorry for not thinking of that sooner. Okay, so you're right. My transportation food service comment goes on the next policy. So this one, IDC would just be review only, with the caveat that we might request or down the road have an exhibit or regulation related to the program eligibility. Okay, shall we move it up? Any other comments or questions?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, awesome. All right, now we get to summer school, IDCA. This one was a revision, I wouldn't say minor, it has some reasonable, I thought, revisions. Mr. Gaskin, do you want to discuss some of the revisions? Or I noticed you exchanged an intervention for remedial, which seemed reasonable, fixed a tense, changed financing to multiple funded sources instead of just tuition. And then something about meets and exceeds state standards instead of just meets.
Yeah, it was just minor things. I think the biggest was the multiple funding sources.
Yeah.
We have an opportunity. Most of our summer school opportunities are funded from the school board or from our general fund. There are some cases where students might be accelerated through GAVs. And we have paid for those in the past, or sometimes we have required parents to pay for those. So we just wanted to leave that vague, not to say that we're requiring tuition, but we did not want to take it out if for whatever reason we did have to require tuition. So it's just really those minor details.
What's GAPS?
GABS is Georgia Virtual. So students, so Georgia provides a virtual school for high school courses and some middle school courses where students can be enrolled in that virtual environment. And the teacher, I'm sorry, you asked me a question about instruction. I can go all day, Ms. Hull. And the teacher in GABS is actually the teacher of record compared to if a student was taking like Edgenuity or some self-paced course in CCSD.
Yeah, my son took GABS in 8th grade for an advanced math class.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Okay, that all makes sense. I also noticed I forgot to mention the CRCT is deleted. And we don't specify the state assessment. We just say state assessment. Is that correct?
That's correct. And we no longer give the Georgia high school graduation test.
Okay. Okay.
So just another question, not necessarily about the policy, but I know we've talked about maybe partnering with Leisure Services to maybe offer some intervention during the summer. Would that fall under summer school? Would that be considered summer school by this definition, or how would that work? I'm reading it like it would fall under summer school based on the definition. But if we needed to add anything in anticipation of, or revise anything in anticipation of that possibility, I just bring it up for that reason.
I mean, we're planning right now for summer school with Leisure Services in mind. We haven't spelled it out, but that is something that we plan on doing. And then the other part that's not related to summer school is that it's just related to after school support in general is also partnering with Leisure Services. So that's our intent, but I don't know if we've spelled it out or need to spell it out, but that's something definitely that we're doing.
Gotcha.
That was
I'm sorry. I just want to make sure that if that was something that would need to be revised and something that needed to be put into this policy, that we did it now instead of later and wait until it got really, really late in the game. So that's it.
We have some things in our ML or M policy, Mr. Harris, about partnering with community organizations. We did those a few months ago. I think the language in those that say we can partner with those groups. But Dr. Thomas, I interrupted you, I'm sorry.
No, you were fine. And Mr. Gaskins basically said what I had unmuted to say was, because we're not just looking at this model for summer school, but looking at those opportunities to engage with different community entities, Leisure Services, YMCA, public housing, with different groups, even during the school year. So that was the only add that I had.
But we, the board, would be able to fund something like that if we needed to under this policy, right? Like if everything worked out and spelled out together with Leisure Services and you had a beautiful program, under this policy, you would be able to, or the board would be able to fund that program according to this, because it will meet the definition. I'm just trying to make sure that we cover all of our bases so y'all don't have to come back and ask.
Right. No, and I'm leaning in because now I'm like, let me read this carefully. I would think
it's intervention. It can be financed from multiple sources and may be beyond the regular school year. So I'm just making sure you have what you need.
So LDA says the board as an individual body has no legal obligation. It will, however, cooperate with other governing bodies in working toward the best interest of the youth and citizens of the county. So.
And I would look at what Ms. Hull's saying is just more broadly working with third parties to provide those educational opportunities, which the district does all the time in many settings, in all settings. I don't see anything in this policy that would prohibit that or contemplate it would be otherwise.
Good. That's all.
Okay, so we don't need to add anything. Okay, what about your comment about transportation and food the verb may is in there saying we may or may not provide those things. Do we want to make more of a stronger statement that our intention is to provide those things, or do we want to keep the option open that we may or may not do that?
That was my, you did that beautifully, Dr. Yeager. That was my question. I know that we traditionally do, and I don't think it's been a problem, at least not one I'm aware of, but is that the intent? Is that something that should be spelled out in the policy, or no?
So currently, Dr. Thomas, the sentence says transportation and food services may be the responsibilities of students and their parents.
I mean, yeah.
I would think
So-
that this would probably be like, from the outside, of course, like looking in, that if we said that the district had to be responsible for that, it puts us in a peculiar position. Let's just say, like, if we are, if this is inclusive of those third party or other organizations and things of that nature, that it could put us in a peculiar situation where we may not be able to, or particularly if it's like like a specific program or what have you. I'm thinking more along the lines of years ago when we had, but this wasn't summer stuff. This was these were more like additional programs, but like a Buzzman, there was one time where the district was providing transportation. Then there was another time that they weren't. And I think they started back. In that case, I think the district should have provided transportation because they were, at-risk students. But I know that may not be, I don't know how feasible that is over the summer based on like our transportation funding. I know it's one of the areas that we are, that we tend to run into issues with like employment, but then also with the financial support from the state. So I wonder if it will put us in a peculiar position for summer program.
What if we said something like the district aims to provide these services or transportation and food services at no cost, but we may. How's that for wiggling around I think it puts.
Try not to charge you, but we might have to.
We might have to charge you if we need to.
That's pathetic, I guess.
Times get hard.
They make fun of lawyers, Nicole. Come on.
Right. I don't know. I'm optimistic. I kind of want to obligate us to do that. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's the unpopular position, but if we're offering opportunities and we're saying that this is CCSD, then I would want us to make every effort to include any student that wanted to participate or that was eligible to participate, whether that be transportation services from the bus, whether that bus passes from the city bus or whatever. I don't know. That's one of those things that I worry about equity and making sure that it's accessible to all students.
So I agree with you, Ms. Hull, and I don't know of any recent occasion where we have not provided transportation or food services. And as we are building our summer school budget today, we are paying, like the first thing we calculated was buses, making sure that Paula could feed, and she gave us some feedback on when she couldn't feed. So we did not schedule summer school during that time because we knew that food would not be available. But then I'm thinking, Dr. Thomas, we partnered with a local, I think it must have been either North Georgia or Piedmont, and they had a summer school where we supported, and the students actually came to this building and they were transported from our transportation to the college. We did not provide them transportation to the school, to the site, but we provided them transportation to the college. So I don't know if that's an example or not.
I think so. As I try to think about where the bus line runs, it is close to the schools, they will be able to get there. So I'm okay if it's not like put into the policy, but I just always want that to be ever present on our mind. And it seems like it has been. I don't know of a recent issue either, Mr. Gaskins, where it has not been. But that was my comment, and I'm happy to hear that y'all are calculating that and thinking about that.
So do we want a sentence up near the top of this, or is it just generally in our policies overall that says CCSD aims for inclusion of all students in our enrichment activities or something like that?
I think that's fine.
Okay, Dr. Yeager.
I have one thought about that. Like I know for summer school sometimes does well, all people who apply, will they be able to get in? Because I know there have been times where, you know, maybe based on criteria, based on space. So I don't want us to put something out there that we truly may not be able to fulfill, because I know sometimes it has to do, we want to be equitable, but it also has to do with spacing, and truly all students will not be able to be enrolled. So I don't know if another sentence or something needs to be, you know, as space is available or something that, you know, not to make a promise that we're going to be able to accept all students, you know, and that's really not the case.
And that's a good point, because just back, this was before we went to the Fund 150 consolidated, whatever we do now. But when I was at the building level and our Title I funds were separate, we would budget out for summer school, and then we had some PSP dollars, but that was not an unlimited pot. And so we had to prioritize which students were able to take advantage of that summer remediation or acceleration. And I recall we would have to go back and like score the kids. And, you know, there were rubrics where we looked at how far they were behind, you know, what their reading levels were, things like that, because we did not have unlimited funds to be able to accommodate any student who may have just wanted to come for summer school. And so you're right. I mean, that's a good point. So we're like, right now we may be in a good place because we have CARES funds and we're able to do some additional work, but then there may be a time when we don't have that, or even with CARES, we may say, you know, in order to safely distance, we can only accommodate X number of students. And so we would have to have some process to prioritize. So that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that.
And I'm good with that, and not putting an inclusive sentence at the top, so long as it's weaved throughout every policy, as long as those rubrics are equitable and students have the ability to apply and be eligible and they're not skewed any type of way, that I'm fine with not having to put that there, because we already have goals already. But I just, that's my thing, that's my buzzword right now, is equity. So as long as it's through there, yeah, no problems with.
Well, yeah. So IB that we just approved aligns our goals and objectives with the strategic plan, which is totally full of equity. So I guess what you're saying is we have already done that. And if you're okay with that and district understands that that's woven in, then we're good. We don't have to keep adding little sentences here and there to remind ourselves.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Okay. All right. So where are we? We are on IDCA summer school minor revisions as is. Are we happy with that? Move it up. No added sentences. No changes to the. Okay.
I'm sorry. I mean, to cut you off.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Woo. Number 14, disadvantaged programs, IDDA. This was a review only. It has a very long description of Title I. Is that necessary, or we want it there as part of the policy? Do we put it in a, I guess, is it a reg? Or I guess it's not really a reg. I guess it's part of the policy because it's state law.
I liked it. I mean, when I read the policy, I didn't have to go anywhere else. I was able to figure out what it meant and everything about it. So I thought it was advantageous to have it listed all out.
Okay. Anybody else have comments about it?
I agree with Nicole, with Attorney Hull.
Nicole is fine.
What would you like to be called? We're all stumbling over our.
My first name, I mean,
It's so really not that deep for me. Nicole is fine.
Okay.
I was wondering that someone said, so is it appropriate title to say attorney? I said, I don't know. I don't care.
It's Attorney Hull, Miss Hull, Nicole. As long as you call me something in the realm of a child of God, we're good. But it's not that deep to me. I'm not a stickler for that title. It's not
Hey,
I
you.
did laugh, Dr. Getty, so I'm just going to start calling her Esquire Hull at the board meetings.
Esquire.
I
Excellent.
like the sound of that. But then I have to do that for Esquire Pruitt too.
Right.
It makes me think I need to get a horse.
That does sound like horse money, huh?
I did have one question. I stumbled over the phrase under Title I. What's the name of the paragraph? Title I program. So in that second paragraph under Title I program, it uses the phrase educationally deprived children. Is that the way the Title I policy is written? And if so, is that what we're calling them? Or I thought this was about economically disadvantaged.
Right, I did. Yeah, I'd agree.
I would need to check that. Our Title I director did go through this, and my notes indicate that it was our state policy, not our state policy, but our federal policy. But I would need to take a look at that just to make sure.
Yeah,
Would you mind just
like
checking
Mr.
on?
Gaskins, but I suspect that's right because Title I is specifically about education. So we're not talking about all forms of deprivation, but educational in particular.
I wonder if they are making a connection to educationally deprived being directly correlated to poverty.
It's the first sentence. When Mr. Pruitt said that,
Yeah.
That's it. You got it.
Yep. Oh, see, look at me being smart, and I didn't even read that. I'm so proud of myself.
Dr. Thomas.
It doesn't happen often. It does not happen often.
Okay, so leave it alone. As review as written and move along. Okay. Anybody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of moving item 14 IDDA review only forward to the board, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's 5:44. We have a few more minutes, if that's all right. Can we go to 6, everybody, or do you need to go?
Had us listed till 6:30, so I'm fine.
I'm good till 6
Yeah, I'm
o'clock.
good.
Good till 6?
I have to
All
hop
right.
off about 2 minutes before Dr. Yeager.
Okay. All right. Well, we got a few more we can get through then. Let's see. Number 15 is IDDC, homebound instruction programs. Some very minor revisions, including the Georgia HHB guidelines and changing physician to medical or mental health specialist. Otherwise, pretty much the same as is. Mr. Gaskin, you want to comment any more on this policy?
I would just say that we had our director of nursing, Amy Rourke, and our executive director of special education look at this policy together. And they said that it was pretty much in alignment, but they just wanted to make those few corrections.
Okay. And Attorney Pruitt, summary of requirements found in law. So.
Yeah, this was one of those I pointed out. It's one of those where you kind of try to summarize it without saying all of it, which can be dangerous. But I mean, this is so specialized. The staff you have dealing with this are not going to be misled by policy. They're going to be looking at state regs anyway.
State. Okay. And it's worth it to have it in here like this, so.
This is actually a really good policy. I've been looking at this a lot lately, just in light of where we are. And this is a really good policy.
I noticed that it says something about contagious diseases or something. Where was that?
It doesn't count if you have a communicable
disease. Yeah, doesn't count. So somebody can't stay home and get teachers to come to them if they have COVID. Is that is that how that works? Or you don't get teachers to come to your house if you have something contagious?
Contagious, that makes sense.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm
just
in the litigation, so I cannot comment on that. Bro, could be watching it.
Fair enough. Okay, that's what I was kind of curious about, but okay, we'll just let that lay. All right, so do we have a motion to, any other comments or questions? Sorry, I keep jumping forward. Shall we move this forward as revised?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of moving IDDC forward as revised, say aye.
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 Thank you. Okay, number 16, Gifted Students Program, and its reg. I understand that the reg needs to be rescinded or can be rescinded, and that some of the details of that reg are now dropped into the policy according to what looked like must be state law, given the language. Is that correct, Mr. Gaskin?
That's correct. This is the state law, and we have a number of gifted students and teachers. And so we just wanted to make it very, very clear about our gifted programming.
Very clear in the sense of it's exactly what the state law says.
Yes.
So this is current with our practice, of course, because this is state law. Do we do anything in addition to state law, or we just follow the state law?
The state law, it leaves some autonomy, like we're looking at better assessments for determining larger number of gifted students. It also gives autonomy to look at local norms compared to state norms. So Dr. Yeager, you asked me a question about instruction. I'm gonna give you more than you probably wanted to know, but
no, I wanted to hear this because that was my concern, is that our gifted policy is too narrow or too narrowly defined about what is a gifted child. So I was curious about that.
So like school A could have, their students could fall, their gifted students could fall in what the state norm would be, which would be like 90 or above. But we could go to school B that doesn't have any students in 90 or above, but their highest is maybe 70 and above. We could look at those students and the highest percentile of their local norm, and then assess them and take them through the process of gifted. So it gives us autonomy, which we haven't explored as a district, to qualify more students for gifted by using the state policy.
Great.
I have a question. Do we have gifted at the high school level? I honestly don't know, and I've been told mixed things before. So you seem like the perfect person to ask.
I can tell you the quick answer that we're working on that, because we're doing allotments, and I actually just, I was telling Dr. Thomas, I just handed the gifted allotments. So we have teachers that are identified as gifted teachers, but we haven't identified as a district what gifted programming looks like for high school. And so that is my work and the work of Dr. Jennifer Bogdanich, because we do not have a clear gifted program. We have gifted teachers and we have gifted coordinators that do tasks like governor's honors and things that gifted students would usually qualify for, but nothing around gifted programming like we do at our middle school, our elementary school levels.
That makes so much sense. Thank you. I was very confused about that.
It seems like they're routed straight into AP classes right away, freshman year, but
Yeah.
that's maybe not ideal either. So, yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions about this revision?
I have a quick question. Mr. Gaskins, I can't remember if we discussed this in our meeting, but how does this relate to, you know how some schools are able, they sort of have a different model, right? When it comes to like how they go about serving their children, as far as like more teachers pushing in. I don't think, and I can't recall our conversation, but I think what is stated here is just generally like about the process of like what qualifies, but it still gives like our schools the flexibility to determine how they're going to go about, or the district, how it's going to go about actually doing their gifted programs, right?
Yes, so the state has guidance for gifted, and they also have guidance for EIP, and there's different instructional models that schools can pick. So you can pick a pull-out model, you can pick a push-in model, which is all defined by the state. And so schools have to pick one of those models, and then they generate FTE for the number of students that are served in those models. Some of the differences that you see from school to school is based on the number of gifted teachers that they have. So for example, we have one elementary school that has one gifted teacher. So that teacher is pulling out kids because they can serve more kids through a pull-out model. There's another school that has 5 gifted teachers. So they can have a push-in model or a pull-out model. So it's really, we give schools autonomy to pick one of those models, but sometimes the model is fixed based on the number of teachers that you actually have. And so our challenge or our work is, how do we help schools generate more FTE so they can have more gifted teachers or EIP teachers, so they can have more flexibility in those models.
Right, because it seems a sort of circular, right? You know, like if a school is not at a place where they can have enough people to push in, you know, they can serve more people, or, you know, they can effectively serve the students through pulling out. But then FTE is based on that. And you know what I mean? So I guess I'm like, how do schools expand? Because I don't know the research around this, but I do know like this whole area of giftedness, especially in younger children. But like, you know, like I think we mentioned this a little bit in our meeting and thought that it would be maybe more of a board conversation. But yeah, like how do we determine? Well, giftedness creates this trajectory for students, particularly for marginalized students, and there's a huge gap. And so it's just trying to figure out, like, from a policy perspective and even from a funding perspective as a board member, how do we, if it is something that we're going to continue to have, and we know historically that people are underrepresented, how do we as a board, you know, support efforts to be sure that, like financially, to be sure. I know it's based on FTE too, you know, but also I'm thinking like outside of the box, are there any ways that the board can support these efforts once things return to normal, right? Like how do we support any hiring efforts or staffing or funding for that so that, you know, those schools that do want to serve more people can?
We've sort of, because we're working on allotments this week, we've sort of already tried to begin those steps. So for example, we have allotted additional gifted teachers to some schools that are underrepresented with gifted students. So for example, there's a middle school that has 10 gifted teachers, and then there was a middle school that had either 3 or 4 gifted teachers, I can't remember. Let's just say they had 3 gifted teachers and they did not earn a 4th gifted teacher, we gave them a 4th gifted teacher. And so part of what the board will see when we present our budget is there might be an increase in the number of teachers that are in our budget, but part of that is because we've identified schools that may need additional programming as gifted or EIP. And because that school doesn't generate the FTE, or because we have to pay the difference between what the state pays for their salary and the addition that we pay for their salary, it will be in the budget. So we might need to let you know what those schools are. So when you're approving the budget or not approving the budget, you can know specifically where we've added gifted teachers. And this is a interesting economic time, but I think we had 4 or 5 elementary schools that had underrepresented gifted populations and teachers, and we allotted each of those schools an additional gifted teacher. And so I think it's just part of how Dr. Thomas guides our work through the strategic plan. And she's made it clear, you know, that we want more advanced students, equitable programming across our district. So that's something that my team and I worked on.
So just a question, because I know a follow-up from Dr. Yant's question that this has come up a lot. Is there a reason that that autonomy is given to the principals instead of having a district model where teachers are pushing in and that be the policy across the district? Is there a reason for that?
We work with each of our principals. I say there's autonomy, but we sit down with each of our principals around master scheduling. And I will tell you that our principals are very interested in generating the program that's going to give them the most FTE. That means that they have the most teachers. And so they're usually not, in my opinion, and I could research this, not picking a program that doesn't serve kids the best. I think they're usually picking what they're able to do with the staff that they have. And when there's a staff of 5 or more gifted teachers, they're usually picking a push-in model, which we support as probably the best model, because that kid is not being pushed out. And then even if you're not a gifted student, you're getting 2 teachers, which one has been trained in gifted strategies for all students in that classroom and not just for the 5. So I think, you know, really the desire of all of our principals is to have a push-in model, but some of the limitations is the number of gifted teachers that they have. And so we as a district are trying to increase that when appropriate.
Gotcha, thank you.
So I'm really interested in this conversation, but it's 5:59. Can I make a request? I know you've got to leave, Dr. Gant. So can we push IDDD and its reg forward as revised or rescinded? Can we briefly look at IDF and IED? Both of those have very minor revisions, and then just do one vote. IDF is interscholastic activities, and the only revision is to change, is change the word cognia to advanced ed to cognia. Right. Otherwise it's leave it alone. And the same with IED, is changes from 7 Carnegie units to 8 Carnegie units. So they're pretty minor revisions. Just to say we got through 19 out of 35, can we maybe move all 4 of these forward in one vote? And then adjourn at 6 p.m. Okay, so all in favor of pushing forward 15, 16, 17, and 18 as recommended, say aye.
Aye.
And then I'll take a motion to adjourn unless anybody really wants to hang around for another 30 minutes.
So moved.
Mr. Harris, you said no. All right, well, think about whether you would be willing to meet again on the 25th or the 4th to finish up these policies. I'll send an email around, or maybe Ms. Tillman, you could poll us and see what works best for everybody, including staff. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. That was an awesome hour and a half. Motion to adjourn?
Great work, everyone. This was a wonderful meeting. Thank you all
So
for the
moved.
feedback.
Second.
Okay. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
Find the button. Oh, there.
So Ms. Tillman, I don't care either one of those dates work